Hi everyone, welcome back to the Team Hem channel. James here again, bringing you another deck profile for the premium format, this time for Angel Feather for Gabrielle. So this deck profile will be post-history collection. So I'm using some of the older cards that will be redone in the history collection for this build. I'll be explaining some of the effects as I go, some of my card choices, and just wanted to do this profile because I've been testing this deck out a lot lately as one of the many decks I'm trying out for post-history collection meta, and I've been liking it a lot. I wanted to get some more ideas, bounce off some ideas from some of our fans here on the channel. So without further ado, here's what I'm working with right now for Angel Feather. So we'll start out with the girl himself, Miss Black Shiver Gabrielle. I only run 3 copies of her because once I ride her, that's really it. I don't need to keep rewriting her unless I really need the soul. And you'll be noticing in this deck that this deck sometimes does have an issue with soul, but it just depends how the game is going, how you're managing your resources. I've learned that Angel Feather is definitely a deck that definitely rewards the player if you're able to control your resources correctly, especially throughout the progression of the game. For those who don't know, so Black Shiver Gabrielle, I'll put her up here so that way you guys can pause and read it. But her first skill is a GB2, which is if you have 2 face-up cards in the G zone, this effect is active. So she says whenever a card is put into your damage zone, she gives a whole front row 2K. So this is also during your opponent's turn. So she has a really good defensive capabilities. So definitely being able to do the post-history collection, have her GB2 active is really nice, especially when you start taking hits from your opponent. Every time you take a damage, you get plus 2K to the front on top of whatever the trigger you might get as well. So she can easily be, with 1 defensive, she can be 23K, so she's basically a force number after that. And then her second skill is when you stride over her, you can counterblast 1, check the top 3 cards of your deck, you put a card from among them to your damage zone face up, and then you choose a face-up card from your damage zone, call it to rear guard, and give it plus 2. The other cards that you looked at from the top go to the bottom of the deck in any order. So she's able to say, before you start striding in your damage zone, you don't really have a bunch of good units to call out. With her, you have 1 extra chance to maybe put a grade 2 to your damage zone or a grade 3, like if you need an attacker, to be able to call it out to rear guard and give it an extra 2K, which for most of your cards that really helps out. The 2K does matter, especially in this deck, it does matter. You can also, with her skill, like if you need a booster, you have a lot of attackers with no boosters, she can check top 3, potentially put a booster, and then you can call that out. So she is the grade 3 for the post-history collection stride, which I will talk about a little bit later, but it's needed for her, so you can go into her and get your 2 protect markers. If you notice, she doesn't have a protect marker, so that's like your main way to get protect in this version of the deck. She's a very solid boss. I really do like playing this deck. I really like staying on her. If I'm not on her throughout the game, it really does hurt. The GB2 does matter a lot, especially when you start taking like 2-3 damage. That's plus 4-6K to the front, and it does matter. So I'm playing 3 of her for now, and then I'm playing 3 of the Hamiel. So this is not the grade 3 I want to ride. I always want to ride the Gabrielle right here. But if in the event you do have to ride her, at least you get a protect marker, but then you're not able to go into this history stride afterwards. So definitely try to ride on Gabrielle. Her main thing for me in this deck is her first skill is when she's placed, if your Vanguard has black in the name, which Gabrielle does, you can counterblast 1 and call a card from your damage zone to rear, and then you give yourself a damage. So the key word for Angel Feather and Premium is rescue. And for those who don't know, how rescue work is you heal a certain number of cards, and then you deal yourself a damage for each card you heal. So a rescue 1 check would be a heal 1, then deal 1 to yourself. So that's kind of what she does without having the actual keyword. So you can counterblast 1, call anything from your damage zone, including the card you counterblasted. You can call that as well, call it to rear, then give yourself a damage, so you can potentially hit triggers before you even start swinging, which is cool. Her second skill, I don't use it very often, but it's nice to have as a guard restrict option. It says when she attacks, you can counterblast 3, she gets 15K in a crit, and your opponent cannot call sentinels against her from the hand. And then at the end of the battle, she goes into the soul. So she's able to be like a kill shot on rear. Like if you've been paying attention to what your opponent's been drive checking during the game, they haven't gone any G guards, you haven't seen the sentinel blitz order. You can potentially steal a game with her by swinging after putting all triggers on her. Counterblast 3, no sentinels. Hey, it's a good time, right? Most of the time you won't use the second skill. It's mainly just the first one. But there have been a few games in playtesting where the second skill did come up. And so she's definitely a very good backup grade 3 option to have on rear. And so that's why I'm running it as a 3 of. That's all my grade 3s I'm using. I'm using more of my grade 3 slots for more grade 1s and 2s so I can do more early aggression. Because this deck actually doesn't run very many GB units, as you'll come to see. So you can do more early aggression, try to push your opponent up high in damage. So when you start striding, they're already potentially in kill range. So that's Hamu. And then for the grade 2s, I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name. But she is Black Aquarius. Yeah, I'm not gonna try to pronounce that. I only run her as a 2 of. I like the counterblast, focus more on other effects, but she is definitely a good unit to run, so that's why I have her in here as a 2 of. She says when placed on Vanguard rear, you can counterblast, give herself 3k, and then you choose a card from your damage zone, put it to your hand, and then deal yourself the damage. So it's kind of like rescue, but instead of healing, you take a card from your damage zone, add it to your hand. That includes the card you counterblast. So do remember that. If you want to run her as more than a 2 of, you definitely can. I just personally been liking it as 2 since I'm running other units. But definitely play around with it. Try to put her in your deck if you're thinking about playing Angel Feather in Premium. She's definitely a solid card to have. And then I run this grade 2 as a 3 of, Miss Black Mapping. So she says when placed on Vanguard rear, you Soul Blast 1, you heal a card from your damage zone, and then you take a damage. So she's kind of like how Hamuel is. Doesn't have the rescue and like the rescue keyword, but she kind of acts like a rescue unit. This effect happens a lot, like quite a bit when I play this deck because I definitely value the fact that she heals and then deals. So she's like a counter charger in that way, and it doesn't cost a counter blast. So if, say I have no face-up damage, I'm able to call her out, Soul Blast 1, heal one of the cards, and then take a damage. So I essentially countercharge. Versus other units like her, where you need to have already a face-up damage to be able to counterblast and quote-unquote countercharge 1. So definitely value more units like her. Her second skill is during your turn. If a new card was put into your damage zone, she gets an extra 10. So she can be a beat stick on rear as well. And remember when I said earlier that whatever you do, whatever you call out with Gabrielle gets an extra 2k. So you can do her to call her out, do her skill, and then she'll have her plus 10 from her and then a plus 2 from her. So she'll be 21 by herself. With any 7 or 8k booster, she'll be 28 or 29 respectively. So she can hit pretty big. So that's why I run her as a 3 of. I've tried running her as a 4 of, but there's another unit that I'm running instead of her as a 4 of. I needed to make space for it, so I cut her down to 1, or cut her down by 1, excuse me. So that's why I'm running her as a 3 of. And then another grade 2 I'm running is the old Amber clone, the Black Slice Haru. So she is a GB1 unit. She's one of the very few GB units in this deck. But the reason why I run her is because she's a multi-attack extender. So she says when she attacks a Vanguard while boosted, if you are a GB1, so you have to have at least one face-up card in the G zone, or you have to be on Stride already to do her skill. You can look at the top 2 cards, put one from among them to your damage zone, put the other on the bottom, then you choose a face-up card in damage zone and call it. So you'll be in a situation where you'll have her, you can call her out with a booster, and then you have another attacker over here. You can go swing with this, swing with Haru's skill, call another attacker, and then swing with that. So that gives you at least 4 attacks that turn, barring any other effects or any stand triggers you might have. So that's why I really like her. I tried running her as a 4 of, but she just feels too clunky as a 4 of. I kept seeing her too much, and I thought, well, if I'm going to be seeing her too much, I'd rather use the space for another unit. So that's why I cut her down to 3, and I've been liking it. I've seen her not too much, but not too little either. So it's just the right amount. So I run her as a 3 of. Definitely, if you're going to play Angel Feather in Premium, I feel this card is definitely needed in the clan. Definitely pick these up if you can. Unfortunately, at the time of this recording, I believe she's $20 because she didn't get confirmed the reprint in the history collection, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. If you don't want to spend the money to pick these up, you can always replace her with, say, more of this grade 2 or this grade 2. So you still have other options in the deck. You're not required to have her, but she's just really nice to have. So if you can pick it up, I recommend it. And then from Overdress, I'm running 2 of this guy, the Knight of Rendering Flash Hybrid. This is just a little personal choice I have for the deck. He says, when placed on rear, counterblast Soul Blast, you check top 3, choose a card from among them and call it to rear if it is a grade 2 or less unit card, and if it's not, it goes to your hand and then you shuffle. So why do I run this? For early game board building, so he allows me to call more units to the rearguard circle to be able to rush more against my opponent. His other use is I can use him to search out my grade 3s. I can use him to search out maybe a trigger unit that I'll show a little bit later. It's a stand trigger specifically. Call that out, or I can call out a specific booster. So he has a lot of applications in this deck. The reason why I only run him as a 2 of is because the Counterblast Soul Blast on Kyber is very expensive for this deck. So you might be thinking, well, it's Angel Feather. They're going to be countercharging a lot, right? Not as much as you would think. And the fact that it also costs a Soul Blast as well is just very expensive. So that's why I only run him as a 2 of. If I see him early, build a board, that's amazing. If I see him later, if I have the resources for it, he's also not bad to see. Worst comes to worst, he's just a free target to choose to put into the damage zone to get something else to field or to my hand with other effects. So that's why I run him as a 2 of. And then my last grade 2 I'm running, I didn't actually think she would stay in here, but she's gotten me out of a lot of jams, is this grade 2 No Seal. So she says when she's placed on rearguard circle, if I have an Angel Feather Vanguard, which I usually do, you'll usually be on Gabrielle, you can take an Angel Feather card from your hand, put it into the damage zone, and then you choose any card from your damage zone, put it into your hand. So I can use her to filter out cards from the damage zone back to my hand by exchanging with another card in my hand. So if I have too many Angel Feather triggers in my hand, if I have too many of a certain grade 1 or 2 in my hand, I want something else in the damage zone, I can do that. Her main use in here is basically to countercharge. So she doesn't say choose a face-up card. Let me put it up here so you guys can read it. She says choose any card from your damage zone, right? So I can take a face-down card from my damage zone and add it to my hand by putting an Angel Feather from my hand to the damage. So essentially, countercharge. That's why I run her as a 2 of. And then she's also not a bad target for Gabrielle to be called out, because with Gabrielle, you're going to counterblast 1, check top 3, put something over there, and then you're going to call something. Well, that counterblast can't be called out that you use for her. But if she's in the damage zone, you can use her skill, call her out, give her +2, so she'll be 10k base for that turn, and then you can use her to get the card you counterblasted for her skill back to your hand. So that's the one thing I really like about Angel Feather. It's a lot of combos, a lot of pieces moving around, and it's definitely not a deck that's very easy to just pick up and learn. You definitely have to take a few games and patience to learn with it. That's what I've been learning a lot, and I've been loving it. I've truly been loving it. So, but yeah, I would only run 2 No Seals. I wouldn't run any more than this. Is there better cards than this? Most probably. I'm not an Angel Feather expert, but for my personal play testing, I've been liking her. So I would run her as a 2 of if you can. And then we're going to go to the grade 1s. Now, I run 4 of the countercharge PG. So if you PG with her and there's a copy of her in the drop zone, you can countercharge 1. Like I said, in this deck, I really value the counterblasting a lot for my effects. So that's why I run her as a max out. I did run Elementaria because, Elementarius is a staple in premium. But for what I'm trying to do with the deck, what I'm trying to accomplish, I need as much counterblast as I can. So I value having the 4 of her, so I'm able to countercharge at least 3 times in a game, hopefully, than to have the 1 Elementaria and then just countercharge twice in a game. So that's why I run as the 4. Do keep in mind, this PG, it does say it has to be placed from hand to the Guardian Circle to be able to do her skill. So if you have her in the damage zone and you try to call her out with a skill to the Guardian Circle, you will not be able to activate her effect. Just keep that in mind when you're trying to PG with this grade 1. And then for my other grade 1s, I run a 2-2 split of the grade 3 Searcher. So this is the V1 and then this is the original one. So the V1 searches top 5 for a grade 3 and add it to hand, and then you discard 1. And then her other skill gives her 5k if a new card was put into any player's damage zone. The reason why I run a 2-2 is because my main goal is to search for Gabrielle, have her as the Vanguard so I can do my post-history collection stuff. So that's why I run the 2 of her to guarantee search for her. But I still do want to see Hamiel from time to time, especially for her first skill. So I'll use this grade 1 to try and search for her or for a Heal Guardian and add it to hand. So that's why I'm running a 2-2 split, and it's been working out for me a lot. I've seen some people do a 3-1 split just to guarantee see this, to guarantee search for the Gabrielle. I tried that out, and funny enough for me, I would see her, but not another grade 3 to reveal to search for the Gabrielle. So I thought, well, let me just go back to 2-2 split, see how that works out for me. And it's, since the time of this recording, I recommend this split. Can other decks get away with just more of these and less of these? Absolutely. There are other decks that can. But I feel with what I'm trying to do in this deck and how I built it, the 2-2 split just works better for me. And then to my other grade 1s, I'm running 2 of this grade 1, the Scaling Angel. So she's a really good grade 1 ride target. She allows you to discard a card to draw a card, so filter. Her main skill though is the second one, is when she's placed on rear, if my drop zone has a normal unit, which 9 out of 10 it will, especially with all the rescue checks and all the healing and dealing you're dealing yourself, you choose a face of grade 2 or less card from your damage zone, put it into your soul, choose a normal unit from drop, and put it into your damage zone. So she lets you build up soul. She also lets you set up your damage zone with any grade 2, with any normal unit from your drop. So say you need to call out a grade 1 just to boost the Haru, or if you need to call another attacker, you can call her out, do her skills, set up your damage zone, and then use whatever skill you're going to do to call out that attacker from the damage zone. So that's why I really like her. I did run her as a 3 of, but I took her down by 1 to run another card. So, and I've been liking it as a 2 of. It has been working for me. If you like to run more copies of it, hey, go for it. Just use this deck list as maybe, you know, like a starting template for Angel Feather, or, you know, it's like, you know, there's some cool ideas here and there. That's all these videos are for. So yeah, 2 of these, and then I run 2 of her. So she's also a grade 1 ride target. She says on Vanguard Circle, if her attack hits, you can draw a card. So going second, she's a really good grade 1 ride. But her main skill is the second one, which is when placed, if your Vanguard has black in the name, which Gabrielle does, you discard a card from your hand, return any card from your damage zone to your hand, and then you deal yourself a damage. So I've used her a lot to discard like my quick shield, or I use her to discard like an excessive amount of normal units I might have in my hand to grab something I need from the damage zone, and then to deal myself a damage. So she's a really good countercharger in that regard, because as you see, she doesn't cause a counter blast, she doesn't cause soul blast, she just costs a card in your hand to be able to essentially countercharge 1 in your damage zone. So if I can make a suggestion, definitely run this at minimum 2, up to 4 for sure if you're playing a Gabrielle based deck. She's just really awesome. I really like this card. She does a lot more work than you would think she would. Definitely shout out to this grade 1 for sure. And to make the space for her, if you wanted to, you could cut out one of these grade 1s I'm running. But for right now, I'm trying out this. This just came out in set 10 of Overdress. This one is Replenishment Angel. So she says when she boosts a rear guard, if you have a grade 3 or greater standing Vanguard, you can counterblast 1, look at the top 2 cards and put them on top or put them on the bottom of your deck. So you're probably thinking, why would I want to use this to just stack the top cards in my deck in a deck like Angel Feather? This doesn't generate any kind of advantage or anything like that. So the reason why I'm running her is I've noticed in my playtesting, especially later on in the game, if I keep damage checking all my triggers, there's not going to be very many triggers left in the deck. I'm going to be seeing a lot of normal units in my drive checks. So I will use her to boost with a rear guard first, check top 2. If there's any normal units, I can just stack them all on the bottom and potentially have a higher chance of hitting the few remaining triggers that are left in my deck. So, and there was actually one game where her effect actually allowed me to win the game because I looked at the top 2. Oh, there are 2 normal units, bottom of the deck, triple drive. I hit a stand trigger, and that was it. So, is she needed in the deck? Absolutely not. Again, she's just in here for playtesting purposes. If you wanted to take her out for another grade 1, boom, easy exchange, 100%. Or you can do minus these 2, put in 1/1, so you can have 1 more copy of her to build soul, 1 more copy of her to potentially countercharge, and add a key card from your damage zone to your hand. Or if you wanted to, you can cut these down and run more grade 2 copies, like maybe another one of her, maybe another one of her. Do keep in mind that if you cut her out for grade 2s, there is no ride line here in Premium, so it will mess up with your grade 1, grade 2 ratios and potentially have a higher chance of being grade stuck by increasing the 2s. But if you're willing to take that chance, hey, go for it. That's just suggestions I would give if you wanted to take her out. But definitely for the Angel Feather, fans and experts out there, I've been trying her. Give her a chance. You never know. You might like her too. And then to round out the grade 1s, and this is just, again, another flex spot. You can change it with anything else. I'm running one of this guy. So his first skill, you don't even worry about it. Don't worry about the dragon tree marker. His main skill is the second one. So he says when a rear guard's placed in front of him in the same column, you can counterblast 1 to draw. So he's basically just a draw card, counterblast 1 and draw. I like to use him with cards like No Seal or cards like her. So basically you'll have him on the board. You get to call one of these 2 in front of him, do his skill to counterblast draw, and then you can use one of them to recycle that counterblast he used. So it's essentially you get a free draw, so to speak. But that's why I like him a lot. He combos off a lot with the grade 2s that let you quote unquote countercharge in this deck. Can you take him out for something else? Absolutely. You absolutely could do that. Just like some of the suggestions I showed earlier with this grade 1, you can exchange him out for one of those. If you want, you can exchange him out for another grade 3. Up to y'all. And then for the triggers, so in Post History Collection, we're going to be having these crits redone. So with these crits, they're going to keep the same first effect. All that's going to really change is their power is going to be 10k, the shield's going to be 15k shields, and then they'll have the extra effect that when these cards are checked for a damage, you get to draw 1 card. So in Angel Feather, you can actually kind of abuse that effect because of all the rescue checking and healing and dealing you're doing to yourself. So all these effects that I was showing that say take a card from damage zone or heal a damage and then deal yourself 1, if you hit this crit, not only do you get a crit to one of your units plus 10k to one of your units, but you also get to draw a card because it was checked for a damage. So being able to hit these off your rescue check effects or rescue-esque effects is so strong. It was the main reason why I wanted to try out Angel Feather in Premium in the first place. So definitely pick up these, get these 4 copies in your deck when possible. And the good thing in Angel Feather is you're able to put these back into your deck from your damage zone with a certain trigger. So I'll go into them a little bit later, but yeah, definitely a very good crit to have. And then we run 2 of the Stride Fodder crits. Because you're able to take cards from your damage zone to your hand, you have a higher chance of seeing your 3s in the damage zone. So you can reduce these in your trigger count for other triggers, which I have more stands in this deck. So that's why I cut these down, put in more stands, made room for 4 of these for sure. But definitely you want to Stride, so that's why I run the 2. And then for the stand triggers, running 4 of the Surgery Angel. So he says at the end of the battle he boosted, if you're a GB1, you can counterblast 1, put him back into your deck, shuffle heal a damage, then deal a damage. And then as you can see, he has the rescue keyword right there. So this is the main stand trigger in this deck that you're going to be needing, because he's able to potentially give you more attacks during your turn that you normally wouldn't be able to. So definitely pick this guy up as a 4 of, I feel. Very important for the clan. As well as this stand trigger, who is still limited to 1, Mr. Refros. Oh, this stand trigger. Either you love him or you hate him. But he is the stand trigger that's able to put cards from your damage zone back to your deck, because he says, act, counterblast 1, put him on top of your deck, choose 2 cards from your damage zone, put him back into your deck, shuffle, and then for each card you put back into your deck, you put the top card of your deck into your damage zone face up, and then you draw 1. So basically, he allows you to countercharge 2 by putting 2 cards from your damage zone to your deck, and then putting the 2 top cards of your deck back over there. Do note that the cards you put back, that you put into the damage zone with his skill, are not being checked for a damage. So if you see any triggers put into the damage zone with him, it just sucks. But this is definitely the stands that I would be running in Angel Feather, any Angel Feather deck I build. I have other Angel Feather decks I want to try out, but definitely going to be fitting these guys into it. And it's another reason why I run a playset of the grade 1 PGs, because as you see, there are no draw PGs. I feel that if you run the draw PGs, you'll deck out faster. And we don't want to do that. We're trying to kill our opponents, so that's why we play a high amount of aggressive triggers. And also do note that because we're running 5 stand triggers, that's going to be less 10k triggers in your deck. So keep that in mind when your opponent is guarding and you're trying to figure out how many triggers to pass, that you have a high chance of hitting 5k triggers instead of the 10s because of these. But I feel it's worth it when trying to do extra attacks with these stands. And then we go to our heals. I do a 3-1 split. You can search these out with the grade 1 V-era version of Nikhil. And then I run the 1 because I need the counterblast for my effects. And so that's why I feel that running at least the 1 here to be able to get that 1 extra counter charge, or that 1 extra soul charge maybe for a stride effect you're trying to try to do, it's definitely worth it. Especially since these heals are also being redone in History Collection with 10k power, 15k shield. Hey, why not? Let's try to run the 1 and see. And I'll tell you right now, I've had games where I wish I had a second 1 to do her skill of bind her and another heal from your drop when you G-guard to either counter charge or soul charge. It's definitely coming where I thought, man, I wish I had a second 1. But I value these a little bit more because we're trying to get to grade 3. We're trying to survive our opponent's turn, especially when History Collection, when everyone else is trying to do the same thing we are, which is ride grade 3 stride while your opponent's still at 2. These will definitely save you from those turns. So hence why I do the 3-1. And then we have our Keter OT. Extra drive checks really matter. Do keep in mind when you're doing the Keter OT with stand triggers, whatever you stand with your stand trigger won't be able to perform drive checks. It's just a rule in the game that they added. So just keep that in mind. And we have our V starter because being able to draw a card regardless going first or second matters. And then for the G zone, so this is the stride that's going to be redone in the History Collection. So for those that don't know, I'll just give you a quick rundown. If you're on your OG grade 3 G-Era boss and you have not gotten any gift markers at all throughout the fight, you can discard cards from your hand during your main phase whose grades add up to 3 or greater to be able to stride into these. And then if you do, you flip a copy and you get 2 gift markers of the gift that your client has. So for Angel Feather, it's Protect. Keep in mind when you're pitching the cost for this, you cannot use stride fodders as grade 3s because when you're pitching the stride fodder to stride, that's during the ride phase. When you're actually performing regular stride, you're summoning these through an effect. So the stride fodders are not going to be able to use their effect of count as grade 3. Just do keep that in mind. Her own skill is that when she, and another skill, this matters, their on-hit effect activates even if it doesn't hit. So hers is on hit, you can check the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 card from among them to the damage zone, put the rest back into your deck, shuffle, choose a grade 2 or less card face up from the damage zone, call it to rear, give it +2. So even if your opponent guards this because of the new history collection effect that their on hits activate regardless, you can still do her effect because it's considered as on hit. So a very solid first stride for this deck. This deck is built to go into this first regardless what happens that your opponent's doing. If you fight against a deck like Chaos Breaker that says, here's a gift marker before you get to grade 3, well then that sucks. It shuts this effect down. That's another thing to keep in mind. Chaos Breaker will just make you have a bad day. At least trying to go into these anyway. And then I also run 2 of this card. So she's like an anti-Link Joker card. Basically, she says you can discard a card from your hand, choose 3 cards total from drop or any of the circles other than your Vanguard, put them into your damage zone, and then all your front row units get 10k for every normal unit put through her effect, and then she gets drive +1 for every trigger you put through her effect. And then however many you put into the damage zone, you heal 1. So she does everything. She lets you countercharge your damage zone. She lets you go around lock by not triggering Chaos Breaker to be able to steal your markers. And she gives power to the front row and gives herself extra drive checks. She's just an amazing card all around. The only thing I wish she would have also done was flip a card. Because as you can see, she doesn't flip a copy in your G zone. So she doesn't increase your G count. And she discards a card. But you know what? With what she does, the discard seems fair to me. But yeah, definitely, I would say run her as a 2 or 3 of. She's just a very solid stride. And then my actual win con in this deck, the guard restrict of Angel Feather. So the deck's pretty much revolved around trying to get her out and do her guard restrict for game. Her first effect, when placed on Vanguard Circle, until the end of the fight. So she says if the number of cards in your damage zone to lose would become 7. If you have 5 or more face-up cards in the G zone, when she's placed, it's 8 instead of 7. So she's like greed on in that regard. So being able to increase your G count to 5 cards face up in the G zone and then summon her means that your damage zone can go up to 8 before you lose is pretty amazing. It allows you to just grind out the game even more. But it's mainly her second skill, which is Counterblast 4. Yep, you see that right. Counterblast 4. Until the end of the turn, whenever one of your other units would attack, whenever one of your units during your turn would attack, if your opponent would guard from the hand, they have to call the same number of cards as the cards in the damage zone that you have at the time that she was activated. So say you go into her and you have 5 cards in your damage zone, you counterblast 4. And so for the remainder of the fight, she puts that guard tax on your opponent of how many cards in my damage zone? 5. So for every attack, you have to drop 5. And so she's a really strong guard restrict. Now imagine you swing with your rears first, then you swing with her and you hit stand triggers. You're just asking your opponent to drop more and more cards from their hand to block. The only drawback from her is that your rear guards don't really get power. So the usual time that I would go into her to try to close out the game would be if my opponent's at 4 or 5 damage. Hence why I'm trying to build the board early, push them in high damage. So I don't really go into her more than twice. The game's usually over by the second one. Either I deck out, or I lose in another way, or she just ends the game. So you only need her as a 2 of, I feel, if you want to run her. Other strides I run, I have this Gabriel Stride. She allows you to perform 2 rescue checks after she attacks, and then for every card that goes into your damage zone during the battle phase specifically, you give 2 units plus 2k. So she just allows you to keep extending. I usually go into her if I don't really have the setup for her for my second stride. So I'll go into her to try to increase the G zone count, and then also try to do extra damage checks to try to proc more triggers if possible, and the power up as well. And another stride I run is this Gabrielle. I haven't gone into her once. I haven't had really a need to go into her. So if you want to take her out for other strides, you definitely can, if you want to try out other strides. But she basically lets you rescue check 1 by flipping a copy of herself for a Soul Blast. And then she also lets you build the board depending on how many cards are face up in your G zone. But if you try to build a board with her, just know that all the cards you call out of the damage zone have to be replaced with cards from your deck face down. So that's why I'm not a really big fan of her. I'd rather use the counterblast or the face up damage for skills like her. But if you want to build an Angel Feather deck that's based around her, you certainly can. Would I recommend it? Me personally, no, but you can definitely try it. It is premium, and crazy things can happen. And then I run one copy of the Messiah, so he's one of the main cards being redone in History Collection. His main use in this deck is if you go second, you can reveal him from your G zone to get a 20k shield ticket. And then if you're fighting against Link Joker and you have a bunch of locked cards, you can place him on your Vanguard circle to unlock any number of cards that you have. Just remember that for each one you unlock, you have to discard a card. So that's the main reason he's in here. Also just a free flip target for any Stride that needs to flip one. In this deck, you don't really do that. So his main use, again, is just for a Link Joker matchup, the 20k shield ticket. That's really it. And then for G-Guards, I run 2 of this one that flips over a G-Guard. She basically says, Soul Blast 1, flip a G-Guard. When she's placed, she gets 5k shield for every face-up card in the damage zone. So if you're going into your opponent's turn and you have, say, 4 face-up damage, you can G-Guard into her, Soul Blast 1, and she's an extra 20k shield. Well, her main use in here is just to increase the G zone count that's face-up for the Guard Restrict Stride. And then the last G-Guard I run, the most important G-Guard I feel in Angel Feather currently is this one, Serial. So she says when placed on Guardian Circle, you can counterblast 1, check the top card, put the top card top or bottom, and then you rescue check 1. So she allows you to kind of see if you're going to hit a trigger first before you heal yourself a damage and then deal yourself a damage. So that's why I feel that she's really good. Definitely a solid G-Guard. You could definitely increase her count by 1 and then maybe run another G-Guard or something by taking her out. But that's really the main strat I would take out if you want to run more copies of her. But yeah. And that was my Angel Feather premium deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I know we haven't been doing as many videos on the channel as we would like to, but things just been getting busy for us. But we're going to try to keep uploading on the channel because they do appreciate the support, guys. But if you guys have any recommendations for the videos that you want to see posted, let us know. We'll definitely be checking the chats on all of our videos. Definitely are up for any recommendations or anything you guys would like to see. But with that, this is James, and hopefully you guys get some cool ideas from this deck. Take care.